just in case.
Um, well, I don't know what you guys have been talking about. I can't keep up with that message. I'm not gonna lie. I like look away and then I look back and there's like 40 text messages on my phone and I'm just like I just click it and I'm like I can't look at them and then I back out, which is awful. So I don't know what you guys have been talking
I
about.
think I actually end up catching about 20% of it,
Yeah.
and it's purely random because it just depends on how my day is going.
Yeah.
Yeah, it happens
Um,
so sporadically too. Like sometimes that thread, that group text won't get any messages for like, I don't know, like a week or so, and then all of a sudden I'll go through and have like 50 for all at once.
yeah.
I wonder if what the time commitment would be to read or listen to everything that's put into it.
I know. I don't
Imagine
know.
it'd be pretty intensive.
Honestly, it would be me who has to do that because I'm so behind. I haven't said anything since like probably 3 weeks ago, maybe longer. I don't know. It would take me a long time to catch up at this point.
Well, it's not all about fantasties either. Like it seems like people just
No,
drop stuff in there that's like maybe relevant to those like-minded thinkers. So
that's right.
Yeah.
There's sort of an intuition about what might be interesting to what is it, 5 or 6 people?
Hmm.
yeah, there's like I think I'm in like 3 or 4 group texts now where it's like there's like
I
certain
love group
collections
texts.
of people.
I love
Yeah,
group texts because it's like you find where each of you overlaps and try to organize each other into those groups so
yeah.
that you can feed those interests into
Mhm.
the niche audiences.
How many are you a part of? Do you know?
Oh no.
Am I in all of them? Please tell me I'm in all of
No.
them. Oh gosh,
Oh,
fuck.
I'm sorry, bro. I'm not in all
I
of
thought I was your
yours.
best friend. Actually, I
I
think you
like the
might
one
be.
we
Let's
just
see.
got going
Let's see.
with my brother and Michael Rao.
Yeah, you're in that one. So let's see. You're in Craig and Mitch. There's another one. Then you're in um the Fantasties one. You're in Craig, Mitch, and Cal. So you're in that one.
I know you and Natalie have like a music
Oh yeah, you're not
group
in
or
that
Oh,
one.
something.
we
That's
do. We
that's
do have a
a
music one.
titled as a peach and an eggplant, if you're
Hmm.
wondering. Oh, there's Natalie and Jesse as well, so that's still in there. But I haven't texted that one in a while.
That's true.
And then usually the other ones, I think the other ones outside of that are like family or something.
Hmm.
I don't know what
Those
instrument I'm gonna have to pick up
kazoo,
The
to get
washboard.
into the washboard.
That's the
kazoo.
ideal. Anything percussion related.
Yeah, I haven't listened to the song you just sent, Natalie, either because we were driving back. But
It's all good. No
I'm gonna
worries.
listen. They stopped for Taco Bell. Got some chalupas.
Ooh,
Okay, another
nice.
thing. Side note: for some reason, my computer has the dictionary open and it won't close. So I don't know if it's like trying to insult me or something. I don't
Just
know what's
right
going on
click
here.
it.
I am, and I do quit, and it won't go away. And then now it's like bouncing, like I'm needing it. It probably just knows I don't.
Can you
Uh,
force quit?
I was trying to do that, but it's not. Maybe if I open it and then quit, because it's like it wants me to read it. Oh, here we go. Now it's gone. All right, good. I know my words. I know my
Weird.
words, computer.
Weird.
I know my words.
Um, well,
We could talk about
uh,
fantasties if you wanted, or we could talk about whatever. But
I
we
just got to the Cosmos mirror or whatever. So I'm very behind everyone.
we weren't that far in our
Oh, were you
conversation.
not?
I think
Oh,
everybody. Have you read? How far have you read, Mitch?
I think I'm like up to 8 or something.
Only 8. Okay, yeah. I think John
okay.
ended up reading through. He's almost done, and I kind of ended up doing the same thing. So we are just on pause for so long. But our
Okay.
discussion, I think we only got up to I don't know which chapter. It was very early. It was like maybe we might have been up to 8. I don't know
Okay.
in the conversation. I don't even
Well,
remember what they were.
I switched books, so I slowed down because I
Yeah.
started reading that other one, the women who run with wolves, women who run with wolves or whatever.
Tell
What's
us
that
about
all
it.
about?
Very good. So far, I'm not very far into it. But the first chapter I was telling Jason about, it's really interesting. It's like um talks about this like archetypal character that's an elderly woman who sings to bones, and while she sings to bones, like usually they're wolf bones, then like flesh will come back on them, and then like eventually they'll like breathe and like come back to life or whatever. And so the purpose of the book is that like every woman has this archetypal character inside of her, and you're supposed to like sing to the bones in yourself to like bring yourself new life. So a lot of people who've read this book are like middle-aged women who are like, this book completely changed my life. I learned how to like basically like get in touch with myself. But the characters in the like the archetypal character that they talk about, they call her La Loba, which is the wolf. And it's interesting because they reference like Carl Jung and the universal consciousness, but in this like traditional way that she's speaking, they call it the river beneath the river. And it's like the same concept. So like this woman basically lives in the universal consciousness. She doesn't live in our reality, like her character, or whatever you want to call her, doesn't live in this reality. She lives in this like river beneath the river. And the way to tap into this river beneath the river is through like meditation, through art, through music, like through all these different things. So when I was reading it, it reminded me of what Jason and I had talked about before, about like I listened to this podcast. This woman was talking about like genius being like something that's outside of your body, and how like there was this poet who was out walking. She said that every time she would get a poem, it was like she had to like chase it back to her house and catch it and then write it. And sometimes she would catch it and she'd pull it back to herself, and then she'd end up writing the poem backwards. And so like the whole idea is that like genius is something external, not something internal.
Did you read this book with Greg by Elizabeth Gilbert?
What is
Big
it?
Magic.
Big Oh,
Big.
yeah. So
That's the same idea, right?
yeah, I started reading it and it was her podcast. Well, she was like being
Oh,
interviewed.
really?
So it is her who was referencing it. Yeah. But I don't know, it was interesting because it made me think that like maybe the genius is in the river beneath the river or in the universal consciousness. Yeah, lots of thoughts. But anyway, all that being said, that was the first chapter and it's very interesting.
You know, it stood out to me, and it may not be where we want to go, but it was it helped these women get in touch with themselves, which is kind of a well, it's kind of a funny concept that you could get in touch with yourself, or it's kind of equal to finding yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
My friend was telling me recently that our age is suffering from uh, a cult of self-actualization,
Yeah.
as if knowing yourself was somehow the greatest good. It's kind of stuck with me, but I haven't thought about it in depth.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's interesting because even at my work, I work with like young boys who are like troubled youth, and almost all of them we have like these forms telling us what are their things they're working through, and a lot of them have what they call like low self-concept, which is just like they have no idea who they are outside. And like I feel like a lot of people our age feel that way, like they have no idea who they are outside of their community as an individual. um I don't know, it's one of those things like I feel like it viewed as really selfish to want to like do like self-discovery, but I mean I used to view it that way. And now I feel the exact opposite about it, where I feel like taking time for like self-discovery or to develop your self-concept isn't really selfish, just because it has the word self in it. It's just kind of like a part of life and a part of you becoming like a better human that can live in this world and communicate with people fully. I don't know. That's how I feel about it, but I could totally, I mean, I'm open to
That
whatever.
seems right, and that's how I've always thought about it. But I've been considering recently, and only considering, I haven't really scratched it at all, that I wonder if we do ourselves any favor by maybe in trying to know ourselves, we end up trying to find what our actual identity is. But I tend to think that we craft that anyway. So maybe what we're doing when we try to find out who we are is creating who we are. And
Hmm.
then I think, are we doing ourselves any favors by doing that? Because maybe the same things were that always were, and we're we do better to just identify as a human who's going through the same things that have always been gone through, and can and the same things win that always win too, when it comes to going through those things and approaching them and addressing them. But I'm less convinced of that than the view that you just said, because that's the one that's been pitched to me, I think, my whole life, and most of the people I respect really take time to self-discover and to know themselves.
Well, and I think that you're not necessarily wrong in the first way that you described it, because I think a lot of people have like their ideal version of themselves that they like want to be, and then they have who they actually are, and
It's good to know both.
they get, yeah, and they get so caught up, I think, with like this like self-discovery thing. They're not really discovering themselves. They're just focusing on like what their ideal version of themselves would be, and instead of like really getting to know who you are at the core, you're just like putting all these goals ahead of yourself where you're like, this is who I want to be, this is who I want to be. And I think like that's where maybe the disconnect happens, because then you have a bunch of people who are just like wildly unhappy about where they're at in life because they're not happy with themselves, because they have like a whole different version of themselves that they want to be, that is just like not ideal, I
Mm-hmm.
guess.
Well, Jason, what do you think? Do you think it's better to try to find out your specific individual identity, or to understand yourself as being one of
I'm probably the wrong person to ask, 'cause I was gonna ask how you even discover yourself, like, you're saying that, and I'm like, I don't even know how one attempts to do that. Because then you mentioned
when
having your ideal, and I would have thought that maybe was something similar to trying to discover yourself, or trying to
I guess
become
there's
what you wanna become.
two maybe ways to think about it. One would be, I'm just not considering the things that are natural to me. I'm not considering the things that I am. And I need to sit down and actually take an account of myself and see what my desires are, what my motivations are,
Is that what
what my
discovering
interests
yourself?
are. Maybe. Or the other thing would be, and I'm starting to wonder if this isn't true, is when I sit down to discover myself, what I'm actually doing is crafting myself. And it's not exactly, it's kind of like the ideal versus what's actually happening, but it's either
Yeah.
the case that we are someone already that we need to sit down and take an account of, or that we're going to each craft who we want to be.
Yeah.
What do you think, Natalie? I mean, because like, even I think, 'cause isn't, like, seeking and finding out what you desire, isn't that kind of like pursuing your ideal?
In a way, unless I like, for me personally, I think my experience of like self-discovery or whatever, which I mean, I think we're always going to be on a journey of that, isn't so much uh is it's more of the first, where it feels like I'm shuffling aside all of these other things, and I'm trying to get to the center of who I am and figure out like why I want what I want. I'm normally, I feel like I'm answering the question why, not like what do I want or what or something like that. I feel like I'm answering like why do I want this? And like I don't know, maybe just hi Luke.
Yeah, man. You always look so cool.
Oh my.
Looks like a cool guy.
But why isn't the center going to be the same for everybody? No, I'm not saying like why.
We're talking
I just
about
wonder.
sorry, real quick. We're talking about like self-discovery and trying to find a center or something. Just catch you up real quick. So go ahead.
Like the middle way?
Well, I feel like the center is like your motivation for like why you want what you want and why you do what you do. And I feel like not all of our motivations are the same. And I also think that like on my personal journey of self-discovery, I didn't like myself through a lot of it because it was like a lot of things that I had just like push down inside that I didn't want to know about myself because I didn't like it. And then as I like came to grips with it, it wasn't so much that I was like crafting who I was. It was more like I was understanding who I already was. And from there I could move forward
And
and
change
like,
it.
in what?
You would then go forward and change it, right?
Yeah, you could go forward and you could change it, you could improve it, or you could learn to lean into it and like see if like you were made this way for a reason. Like there's like, but I feel like the first part is like understanding yourself. But that's just been like my personal experience with it. I think other people do the latter of like feeling like they can, craft themselves and move forward that way. And people do it. I mean, like I just am not very good at that.
I think practically though, what you're saying is totally right. That you need to take time to give an account for what's making you tick and motivating you. But I'm a little nervous just lately, about trying to have a big individual, identity that is so distinct or unique or special amongst everyone else.
Mm-hmm. Because you want to be part of the whole? Is that why?
Because I'm starting to wonder if it's to my advantage at all to do that. And I'm starting to wonder if it's to my disadvantage to do that.
Luke, what do you think?
I am still trying to figure out exactly what we're talking.
Wait.
Should we think of ourselves as individuals, or should we think of ourselves as just Joe so-and-so, with the same things that always were? Everything that's happening to me is common to man. I shouldn't try to protagonize myself.
Well, I mean,
I expressed that in a way that bent it towards one
Yeah.
side. That was
Yeah,
bad.
because Natalie was talking about. Can you try to catch him up, Nat? Were you talking about self-discovery and?
Yes.
You can probably say it better than I can. That's the only reason why I'm asking you.
Yes, I'm trying
So
oh, we got here because I was talking about a book I was reading and I said something about how like a lot of women read this book because it helped them like rediscover themselves. And there's like this whole idea of like singing to your bones to like recreate who you are, to like revitalize who you are or whatever.
Sure.
And so we started talking about that. And Mitch said, what were the two self-discoveries? Was either like recreating yourself.
Yeah, when it
or
comes to knowing yourself, you're either crafting that person or you're finding out what's already there.
yeah.
Hmm.
And like I said something about how like a lot of people have like an ideal version of themselves that they want to be, and then they have who they really are, and there's not always an overlap. If you're like, to me, that's where I feel like I don't know that it works if you don't know yourself, because then if you're like just crafting something, then it's like you're trying to get to this ideal self, and if there's no like overlap, you're going to be so unhappy and you're going to feel lost.
I mean,
I don't know.
I'm constantly thinking about how I wish the future me would just hurry up and enter me. Like I'm because I know I'm in a state of becoming. And so it's like, but there's so much in me that I still need to like, I'll use the language of like I need to die. There's so much in me that still needs to die in order for me to be that person that I know I could be. And I'm talking about like very obvious stuff, like it's like I'm still like I can identify all the times in which I put myself first in almost any scenario. And I mean, that goes back to like even sacrificing uh your understanding of the collective, or even your understanding of diversity for um just yourself, or you know what I'm trying to say. Like, no, that was weird. That what
Oh,
I just said was really weird, actually. But I think I'm constantly in this interplay between. My first thought was like, okay, like you guys are talking about the individual and the importance of cultivating uh, a healthy sense of identity, maybe, or potentially even something like self-actualization. Like, how important is self-actualization? Um, and I think that's very important, but like they're in this constant uh uh it it like unity and diversity are, or what am I trying to say? Like it's always these weird platonic like dualisms that are constantly occurring in my brain. But that I think it's like, how much do I matter as an individual, especially because I hear what you're saying, Mitch, too, where it's like aren't I supposed to be actually sacrificing my own sense of like not that I'm supposed to like not that I'm supposed to like completely ignore who I am, but like who I am doesn't matter. Like it's, I don't know if that makes any sense.
that's pretty close to what I'm kind of getting interested in, because we have on one hand the two ways of getting to know yourself, of self-actualizing, but then there's the question of how worthwhile is it to self-actualize? And you want to say, well, you need to be keeping an account for yourself, that's for sure, or else you're just going to go with any given flow. But what connecting it to an identity is more what I think I'm interested in getting at is, does it serve me at all to distinguish myself from everyone else? And maybe that is the answer, Luke. Like, I should be constantly sacrificing myself on behalf of that which is outside myself. But I don't
Does
know.
it serve you at all to distinguish yourself? My
Yeah.
my intuition, and this is just gonna sound like a cop out, is that it's always both. Because I'm like, I think you could maybe through self-discovering yourself, if you went too far, I think you could become deluded. And
Yeah.
like, because I think it is valuable what other people say about you. But then there are times where people say stuff about you and they clearly don't know anything about you at all. And so it's like, how much do you take with that? But then you could have this opinion of yourself where you think one thing of yourself and everybody else thinks the opposite, and it's like you could just have some fancy idea of yourself where you're almost drunk. I don't know. What do you think, Natalie? You feel like you want to push against that? I can see it on your face. Do it. Shoot it
Do
down.
I really, really do.
Do. Well, I mean, you do have more. Well, you have more
I just
experience with, I think, people almost wanting to. And maybe this would be sharing too much, but I feel like you've had experience where people like are almost wanting to shape you into what they want you to be.
Mhm.
yeah,
So
I
that's
feel
probably
like
why you would push away with that.
yeah, I feel like I've grown up with a lot of that, and not like from our parents or anything, just from like church and stuff. And And uh I don't know, I have a really hard time. I understand the like wanting to like humble yourself and put others first and all of those things. I think I'm coming from a very different place in life now, where I grew up in a church that told me that I needed to always put others first, to the point where I just kind of completely lost who I was. Like that was a big part of my journey last year, was I had no idea who I was anymore outside of like the people I'm with. But I will say it's hard because like I just learned about this like research that they did. Maybe you guys know about it, but they were like talking about babies and how like basically they were saying babies don't exist without like someone with them. Like they don't exist by themselves. It's like there's nothing. They like only mirror what is happening. And so it's hard because like as humans, we have to have community. Like that is what makes us exist. And so I think it's really important. But then the other half of me is like, I think it is important to be the protagonist of your story. And I think like you as an individual have so much value because like on one hand, yes, we're supposed to like be a part of the whole and like love others and put others first, but on the other hand it's like, I mean, like he knows the number of hairs on our head. Like he created us so specific, there's no one else that's ever going to be like you in the earth, you know. And so in like learning about yourself is learning about like how he made you. And I don't really see the harm in it, I guess. But the baby thing is weird.
Well, one thing I would say is like, I feel like it's hard to avoid being the protagonist in your own story. But where I would kind of push back is like, I feel like um you're you're called, like if you just exist by yourself, it's pretty miserable life. So like you're almost called to give yourself. Does that make sense? Like you're called to give of yourself to others. But then if you have no identity in yourself anymore, if you've lost yourself, then you have nothing to give. So you kind of
Yeah.
have to discover yourself in order to be able to give that portion, I guess. Go ahead.
Luke wants to talk about the babies. I can see it.
Yeah.
I do. I want to talk about babies, and it's not even because I mean I've got uh, a, a little baby right now, but I truly think like that mirror stage development thing. I feel like I've been stuck there way longer than I should have been. So like where my identity is formed by everyone else's opinion of who I am outside of me. So like my basis of who I am is not formed by any sort of like understanding of myself. I guess to a certain degree though, this is where it gets blurry because it's like, is your understanding of yourself strictly confined to like how you're perceived by others, because like that's what is occurring in this like mirror stage development of a child. And then it's like, so then but like I think I had to take somewhat of an inward turn at some point where it wasn't i wasn't I wasn't forming my identity by um how everybody else conceived of me, or my perception. This is where it gets kind of meta because it's like my perception of how other people are perceiving me. So it's like I'm rooting my not only my identity but my self-worth and everything in like what how I'm interacting with other people versus like my own self. And this sort of like, I suppose, inward turn where you're and I think that inward turn is a movement into your own sort of, I don't know, your own self, which has already been, this is where it gets weird because I don't know how to talk about it. I don't know how to talk about it at all. But it's like I who because like part of my inward turn wasn't necessarily an inward turn just to who I am, but like who God might perceive me to be. But that's also like another refractory sort of like lens. Like I'm
Mhm.
still not seeing myself through myself unless I am also like identifying myself with like the image of God, and like that this gets into the whole theosis idea and deification idea and stuff like that too. So it's like, um, yeah, but all this stuff trips me out like all the time.
It's hard too because it's like what do you define as like discovering yourself? Like that's what Mitch and I were talking about right before you got on, is like I was saying it was like what at your core is motivating you to make the choices that you make in life. But like I don't know if that's right. That's just what I
Well,
thought. Like I have
it,
no idea.
either you're imbued with something naturally that's specific to you, or you're just the sum of your particular intake.
Yeah.
And the image of God thing is interesting because that would seem, even that's not particular to you. So either, yeah, you've got something instilled in you by your creator that is particular to you, just how he made you, that you have to offer, which there are reasons to believe that, or you're just whatever you've taken in your own experience and filtered and decided against and shuffled around.
Yeah. Which is crazy because it's like, I don't know, even I don't know, like you think about kids who I think I'm just thinking about all this stuff because of like kids with trauma and stuff. And like I just came out of like a training session, and so I have it all on my brain. But like even kids who are adopted at birth, like if you're in the room, there's still trauma that's already done. Like if you grab that baby as it comes out of the mom, like it's like there's still already trauma done because of like all of the stress or whatever trauma that she's endued is like, going to the baby before it's even born. And like that already affects a huge part of the way that its brain is developed. And I don't know, it's just, and it's interesting because it's like, okay, is it our brain, our soul that makes us who we are? Is it like the combination of our soul and our spirit and our body? Like, is it the combination of our memories? Is it, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. Is it all of it all together? I have no idea.
Probably it's probably all of it. It's too much to
It's
describe.
probably all of it. And part of me wonders
Hmm.
too, like even thinking about like reflecting back as like a child, it's that as you're like growing older, you reflect back what you're taught to reflect back. And like there's like there was this video I watched. It was like something like it was like detachment versus authenticity or something like that. And it was talking about like parents who like teach their kids subconsciously not to be authentic because of like the standards that they put on them at a young age. And like uh basically like I wonder if mirroring that is like slowly separating you from whatever your true self is.
Well,
That's where that divide happens. I don't know.
you're talking about like the thinning of the individual. So like in order to participate in public life, your private, like who you are in your private, who is the authentic you, like when no one's watching, that's who you are. Like when no one's, you know what I'm trying to say? And
Mhm.
maybe that's not perfect language to talk about it, but like your private self is, you have to thin that down in order to participate in life. And so like and you learn that from like a really early age. Like
Mhm.
you have to thin down your identity, and you have to become less of like your individuated self in order to um you have to individuate, and then you immediately have to like start deconstructing your individuation, because like you have to now like do all this adult stuff, or like whatever, you've got to play with other kids, and you've got to, you can't pick your nose and eat it, and like
Well, the way
then
you
like
present is also part of you too, right?
That's
uh,
true. Yeah.
because it's not just your private self that's you. It's always so funny when like if you suddenly snap at someone, you know, and they're like, oh, now his real self comes out. Why is that my real self? I've been 80% of the time really patient and generous. It's like all of your private self, your public self, the majority self, the minority self, it's all the sum of
Oh,
you.
you.
It
Okay.
seems like a covering, like there's like an intimacy with your private self or something. Like
Yeah,
your wife would know you better than I know you, Mitch, because she gets to see.
but does she? Because what there's a me that when she's not around, there's a me that's presenting in tandem with her when we're in public instead of private.
I
I mean,
I see what you're saying. Yeah, there's like I don't goof off with my parents the way I would goof off with friends or something. So
But
there's different.
but I get what Luke's saying. It's like those are all fragmented versions of yourself. It's not a whole. And so like why we're mirroring back what we think works for the culture that we're in.
Yeah, but why does
And
this happen? Like when you guys were talking about even the image of God earlier, what came to my mind, and I think, and of course you phrased it better than I did, Natalie, but we were talking about it a long time ago. And I basically said something to the effect that I think it's childlikeness is like the image of God. And you kind of said it's almost just like just being. Like God just wants you to
yeah,
be. He just wants you to be. And it's like when you're a child, it seems like you do that. But you're chill. But then it's
because
like,
you're
well,
kind of
why?
fearless.
What?
You don't really, you're kind of fearless and you don't really have these
But you don't.
set standards and you don't always understand why there are rules given. So you don't always follow them. I feel like social rules as a
Yeah.
child.
But you seem, I feel like there's almost like you're more original in that way. You're almost more of yourself because you're just being. But then at the
Mhm.
same time, like I don't remember having a sense of myself that much as a child, or not
Yeah,
when I was in that state. Like it's almost like you're not paying attention to yourself. You just are yourself. It's
Yeah.
weird.
dude.
Yeah.
Like your eighth grade version of who you are, do you remember back to it? I had like wristbands, sweatbands
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
each head, like a ball chain necklace. Like you're doing all these things to try to like set yourself apart, like aesthetically and stuff like that. And it's
Hey, I
like,
was gothic, so yeah, I can relate.
yeah, you get it. You had the trip pants and danglers all over the place.
and we'd still do that, but
Yeah,
that's still what I'm wondering if that's worth their while, like
sure.
just to stand out or to have an identity that's
Well, there's like
mine in a way that's not
I
all
think
other
of
humans.
Jesus. They even doesn't Scripture talk about how like Jesus was like plain clothed or something? There was like nothing that set him apart
Yeah.
from like.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's that echoing in the background of this.
But maybe it's just the motivation of like why you're wanting to discover yourself. Because if you're wanting to discover yourself to be different, it's like, okay, that doesn't really matter very much. But if you're wanting to discover yourself to actually like know who you are, I feel like you're just gonna be
You're singing
more
to your
raw.
bones.
You're
Yeah.
singing to your bones, and it's
Yeah.
almost like that image of like singing to like the bones of your like who you were as a child. Yeah, and like bringing that back to
Ah,
life.
that's pretty good.
Is
Yeah,
I
my
yeah, because there seems to be a difference between that and what Mitch is talking about of like distinguishing yourself. Because when you mentioned that, Mitch, it reminded me of the Green Knight or something where he's getting ready to go. King Arthur tells him to tell him, he's like, tells Sir Gawain, tell me a story. And he says, I have none to tell. And he's like, says something like, is it wrong for me to want great things for you? And then later his girlfriend says, why isn't goodness not enough? Isn't goodness enough? Like, why do you want to be great? So it's kind of this weird play. But I'm like, I don't
Want to
know which
stand
one's
out.
better. Yeah, you kind of, I mean, but I think there is something noble to the desire to distinguish yourself too, though. Um, but like I think you said, Natalie, it's probably just a posture of heart and your intention.
well, and I mean, I don't know, we've probably all met those people where it's like it's not like they look different. They look exactly like everyone else and they dress exactly like everyone else, but there's just something very magnetic about who they are. And I think those are the kind of people that know who they are. It's not like a woo thing. It's not like they're like, very charismatic. It's like different. It's a different kind of like
Hmm.
feeling.
And
I don't know. I don't know.
I want self-actualization in my ideal self. I want self-actualization to the end of something else. Like I don't want self-actualization to be like my end, you know, my big goal of
Why?
life.
I'm curious as to why, but I get it because I think I feel it, but why?
Yeah, it just seems it just seems bad. You know, it just seems like a bad end. It doesn't seem like a good stopping place because it's too self-oriented. You
Yeah.
can't completely disorient from yourself, but
But then you get the self-actualization, which is actually just the language that disguises like ego death and the eradication of self. And, like that's what I hear, at least a lot of people who talk about self-actualization are these people who are privy to the language of like what self-actualization actually is this coincidence of, you know, the eradication of self, so there's that weird thing too.
huh.
Well, I also feel like what Jason said earlier made sense in that like you can't really give of yourself unless you know yourself. And it feels like if you skip that step, I don't think it should be your end goal, but I
Well, yeah.
definitely think it's a huge step.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because like right now, Natalie, like even what we were doing earlier, writing songs and stuff, it's like, why are we doing that? Like I mean, it's to leave. It's like food. I mean, it's
I
like
don't know.
food for other people. Like you're hoping someone else is gonna enjoy it. It's not like,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's the intention we're doing it with. It's really not to become
Yeah, I
famous or
don't think you
anything.
could do
It's
away
just
with
kind
it.
of, I mean, I guess some people do it to become famous, and then it's kind of a self-seeking thing to distinguish themselves. But if you're really just doing it to try to
think-
impart something to the world.
Or you're doing it like for me, sometimes I do it for other people and sometimes I do it for myself. Sometimes I write songs because I need to.
Yeah.
And it like helps me process. And so like in that way I'm doing it, I guess, with selfish intentions. I'm willing to share those things so half the time, but like I don't know, I think it can be for both reasons.
Is being selfish always wrong?
Is
No.
what?
Oh my gosh, is this
Is
an
what?
Ayn Rand turn?
What did he ask? I missed it.
Is
Is
being
be-
selfish always wrong?
Oh,
Because it seems like it.
I'm
On paper.
so adamant against it. I'm like, no, it's not wrong.
I know you really are.
Selfishness
I do
seems
that.
bad, right?
It seems bad to me, but
This
too.
might
But
be a semantic issue here.
Well, there's an argument, a philosophical argument that Ayn Rand makes that
Oh, really?
selfishness is like benefits everyone. Like if everybody took their selfishness to the end, the
Is this
extent,
capitalism?
yeah. Oh yeah, it's completely related to.
it would it have to end in selflessness at some point? Because if you
It has to.
because I would think if you follow, I would think if you follow selfishness, if you continually just choose me, then you end up just with yourself. And then I'm like, well, that freaking
I don't know.
sucks.
I'm not like privy to
Everything
how
has to have an end outside of the self. Like, and in that way, no, this isn't right. There's no such thing as altruism, right?
there's no such thing as altruism. Oh, I hate that.
I know, me too. But isn't it the case?
I don't know what that means. I don't know what
That
you
was
mean.
what was always so fun about.
Like
You guys
actual-
know the John Piper?
Yeah, I know of John Piper. I don't know much.
Okay,
about him.
so his deal was Christian hedonism, right? He's like,
Yeah.
look, everybody, there's no altruism. Everybody wants happiness, and so happiness is only found in God. So that's Christian hedonism. Like pursue God, but it's glorify God because then you'll be most happy.
That's funny.
Yeah. So, no, I guess you're right, Natalie. It can't be all bad, but maybe it's a semantics thing.
I mean, I can't
I think it
imagine
might be a semantic thing.
I can't imagine it would be all bad because like babies are selfish. Like,
In what way?
right? Well, because they come out. Well, maybe they aren't. I would just
Don't
think
babies do bad things?
that.
Yeah.
I
dude.
mean, but I would think when they come out, they're wanting like, I mean, they're not necessarily like their first thought, I wouldn't think, is like, oh, how can I give of myself back to my mother? It's more like, I need food from you. Like, I need to
Or is
survive.
it possible that their first thought is a bad one?
What did you mean by this?
I don't know. I'm saying babies are bad. It's a terrible start for me.
Like
I
I
don't know where you're
picture the
going
little babies on the Passion of the Christ or something that he's holding.
Oh.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
That's a
talking
weird image.
about? That's a bad baby.
Okay. Yeah, no. If selfishness is what, then it's
Well,
prizing your desires or needs above others, right?
I think so.
That's always bad.
Sure, but it seems like self-possession is even more complicated.
What's that?
Like it, because like you can feign, like, because I think that you're privy to this, Mitch, because I've heard you talk about it before, but like, because like this, there's like this false humility. There's this way in which you can be so self-possessed. You know how to feign all the characteristics of someone who is completely selfless, but in reality, you're the most self-possessed out of all of them. You know what I'm trying to say? So it's like it's like wanting, because like you can, like I will catch myself in this cycle. You know how like it's like I am, you know, I might be doing all these virtuous things or whatever. Like for example, I run this like little garden here in our urban environment or whatever, and it's outreach to neighbors and stuff like that. But it's at the same time, it's like I want to like pull the eyes off of me, because if I, you know, I will receive my glory in full if everybody sees what I'm doing. So like, and I'm going to be the white savior on the corner, you know, whatever, you know, and it's like this weird, like only what you do in the privacy. This is why Daniel went in his closet and prayed. You know what I'm trying to say, in comparison to like being out in public or on the balcony praying. It's like, but you can even twist that, or at least I know I can. It's like, okay, well, only the things that matter are the things that I don't post on Instagram, and the things that I don't, you know, the things that actually are of value in this world are the things that I'm not seeking any accolade for. And it's like, but then that can like trip you up too. So it's like, dude, there's weird ways in which I just don't know where to turn.
The only way is the Bruce Wayne way from like The Dark Knight. He presented as selfish constantly so that he could be selfless, you know, all night fighting crime.
Wait, what? He presented
Like he would always prance around like he was like this rich, stuck
oh
up
yeah.
Funny.
jerk.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
then I mean that
Well,
was the whole
There
mile.
seems to be something though with what Natalie's saying, I think too, is that it seems to be a selfishness in terms of like a self-preservation, which I think would ultimately lead to some type of selflessness.
Right. Yeah, you do that to the end of
well,
Right.
why do we think selfishness is bad?
Um
Can we
I
just
think
put words
you
to it, because I don't understand it
it
anymore?
might just be yeah, it might just be semantics, but I don't know
our
better
parents
words to
told us
use.
that.
I
The
feel like, yeah,
gospel?
I'm like, where does it say that being selfish is bad?
Well, I think it
Always
might just
esteem like the needs of others before your own. It seems like to be this kind of constant refrain of self-sacrifice in scripture, but
I wrote that thing. I'm sure I sent it to you. I don't know if you ever read it, where I wrote that thing about heaven. And I was
Mhm.
just following that idea of like, you have everything you want. You've got everything you want. You've chosen like, but you don't have anybody else. Like you're alone. To me, that's hell. Like you'd give me the whole world, and if it was just you, like, and no life was left, like, and there was nothing else. Like, I mean, even if you were in the world and there were plants around, if you just keep choosing yourself, everything goes to shit. Like you don't take care of anything. Like if you, but that's probably, go ahead.
That's true, but aren't you also choosing yourself by choosing who the best people are to keep in your life?
Ah, why'd you do that?
I mean, because like if
Yeah.
you think about it, like if I was gonna be selfless, then I would be friends with all of the homeless people that stop me on my walks every day.
Or
But
absolutely no one.
Don't do that.
or
I'm just kidding.
absolutely no one. But I don't
Yeah.
want to do either of those things. I
Yeah.
want to keep the friends that I have because they're good for me. And that's like a selfish choice.
But that doesn't mean
Like,
that
best for
that
me.
That is true.
that scenario is the best scenario. I mean, it could be better that you would be friends with all the homeless people.
It could be. It could be more. It would definitely be more selfless. But I'm not going to do that because that's not good for me.
But the,
Oh, this is a really interesting.
That's a very good pushback. Yeah.
Yeah.
it might be good for you, and it might be that it's erroneous that you wouldn't do it. I mean, if we're just trying to answer the question, like, why is selfishness bad?
Well, I mean, it gets into the weird thing of like, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, that's hard.
It's like, never mind. Never mind. I was gonna say that's why you just like make sure that everyone's sharing your vices, and you are handing cigarettes out to all the homeless men in town, and you make sure that they have money to buy their booze, and that is a way of leveling the karmic path, so that
Okay.
like you're like it's like I've got my vices, you've got your vices, I'm not judging, you're not judging, you like, okay.
Yeah. So I'm on the right path.
Yeah.
I'm confused.
This gets into when Michael Robb, the last conversation I had with him, he said something about he asked me what like you look for in friendship, and then one of the last things he named, he was making a list. One of the last things was names like you want to find people that inspire you to be better. And I was like, why would you want that? I was like, you want people worse than you, so you look better. Like,
Oh my God.
find friends that look worse. Like, it's not a
Well, it's also selfish to find people that will make you better.
yeah. I don't.
That's true. I think
Yeah.
honestly, because that was something I struggled with, was like cutting people out of my life because it felt selfish.
Oh, I feel
People
that.
tell you to do that all the time. Like people told me to do that all the time. They were like, it's not selfish, it's just taking care of yourself. And it's like, okay.
Yeah. I guess that's what I meant where I was trying to use the word self-preservation instead of
Yeah.
selfish. Because I feel like there's maybe something going on with semantics here.
But we
Yeah.
can, we
that
can.
phrase "singing to your bones" sounds to me like a self-preservation or a resurrection or something. I don't know. It's very poetic. I like it.
It's not selfish to care for yourself necessarily, right? If we go with the definition of selfish being like I'm putting my desires and needs at the expense of others. I'm putting them first at the top.
Is it first or is it at the expense of others?
Yeah, I would expense maybe making it too specific. I would say putting first.
I think what we're talking about is Buddhism, right?
No.
No, it's Buddhism. Okay, I don't know. I mean, I've just heard that Buddhism is the pursuit of like
No.
a denial of yourself so far to the point where you don't even recognize yourself or anyone around you. But I don't know. No, so go ahead, Luke. Sorry, you know more about it.
No, I do not know anything.
Oh, okay. You don't? Why'd you say no?
I really don't know. It was like this weird impulse, probably. Like,
Well, I
even
trust
though
it.
it's so, like,
I trust your intuition. This is only what I've heard, and it's probably one of those things where
well,
it probably is
maybe-
something where people object. It's like, where they'll find the bad thing about a certain aspect and really go gung ho on it and really amplify, the bad part of it. But I heard that's kind of what Buddhism focuses around, is the dying to the self, but so
Yeah.
far to where it gets almost destructive.
Yeah. But also, I don't know, if you think about like Gandhi, he kind of sucked.
I didn't get that impression.
I mean, like all that stuff came out about him like testing his like sexual boundaries and making
Yeah.
children sleep with him naked.
Oh,
Like
come on,
that's freaking
that's
weird.
one flaw. Cut
Yeah.
the guy a break.
It's like, but like, why
Cancer
do
Gandhi?
why do you do that? Though? It's like we look at him as like this selfless, like amazing man. Which okay, sure, he did amazing things. That is one flaw. But at the same time, I'm like, why did you feel the need to prove that to everyone?
Well, we
Because
can
he's selfish.
go back and forth about whether a particular decision is selfish or not. But I think we have to agree that selfishness is always wrong.
She
We
would
don't
just
have to. I think we do.
Okay,
don't
we
think
need to
so.
talk about what is, okay, loving your neighbor as yourself.
Exactly.
What is
Oh,
that?
Mitch, you look like
That's-
someone just slapped you across the face.
Well, because you can't. The thing is like I thought
would-
about that a lot actually, because
What do we do with that?
I thought about it a lot because I feel like I've always been like quoted that scripture like
Mhm.
my whole life, and it makes zero sense to me because I was taught to not think about myself. So I'm like, am I supposed to treat my neighbors as garbage because that's what I was? That's how I
Maybe it has to do with your
myself.
impulse. Like, you know, the way you're loving yourself all the time, like always looking out for yourself, looking out for your best interest. Love your neighbor that way.
But I'm not. That's the thing is I was trained in the church not to do that. I was
Uh-huh.
trained in the church to do the exact opposite
Sure.
of never looking out for
They
myself
trained you well.
and always putting others first. And so like if we think about how we're like trained in the church to do that, and then they're like, love your neighbor as yourself, and it's like, okay, so maybe I should like not be very nice to my neighbor anymore, not think about their, I mean, even if you, okay, if you think about it in like if my friends come to me and they're like crying about something, or like my family comes to me and like, or my, let's say my sister comes to me and she's crying and she's talking to me about stuff, and I would give her grace for that because I'm like, yeah, there's room for tears, there's room to be sad, there's room for all this stuff. And then I turn around and if I have a meltdown in front of anyone, I feel so much shame and guilt for that. And like everyone's always like, give yourself the same grace that you give to others.
I'd shame you.
But I
You're
was
being a
never
pussy.
trained that way. I was trained the opposite. And so how can you really love other people and give them grace that you're not willing to give yourself because you don't understand that grace?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think that if you take something like always look to the needs of others before yourself and love your neighbor as yourself, they're saying the same. They're offering the same ideas. They're just at two different times saying them in two different ways. This one's gathering an assumption that you love yourself really well and that you're looking out for yourself. And this one's kind of going with the same thing, but it's skipping the comparative quality.
I kind of feel like there's just going to be a weird dual working of both, and we're not going to be able to get around it.
Yeah, you
What
can't
is? I mean,
escape yourself.
how do we even look at God? Is God selfish for wanting
Well,
something to love?
God would
But
be
love
someone
is selfless.
who
Described
would
as being.
be.
Can you bring in the Trinity?
What is he doing? Loving himself. What is going on here? This Trinity thing.
Honestly,
Triangles.
the a part of my
Every
bold,
triangle's
like,
a love triangle. You
I
love
don't know.
triangles.
Part of me wants to say that like maybe he is.
Well, he's within his right to be, because he loves us well by demanding that we love him. Because in loving him, we have our highest joy and well-being.
Well, it seems to me like there is a loving of self through the loving the other, which is like in turn loving yourself. I don't know. It just seems like there's this weird interplay between both that we keep dancing around right now, and I don't know that we're
Well,
even
Yeah.
no,
supposed to get around it. Like it seems like it's
I could-
necessary.
I could see that because it's like that book, Universal Christ, how he talks about like loving all creation, whether that's like loving nature or loving like other people, like you're loving Christ because everything's made in his image. And by loving yourself, you're also loving Christ because you're made in his image.
Well, not everything is made in his image, right?
Not
Everything was
everything-
made through him.
Everything was made
I would
by his word.
where I would push against that is that where I think if something's parasitical, it might not be. But maybe that's
what
a
does that mean?
disagreement here.
Uses
Well, because
some word.
like and maybe that's something selfish. I don't know. Maybe that's how I'm using it. Like
Hmm.
just something that's like just a bloodthirsty. I mean, you know people like that where they're out for themselves and that's it. They're out for number one, and no
Like
one else
a
matters.
human being that's like that?
Yeah, or even well,
A
even any other things
like
in nature,
Joffrey?
like other yes, Joffrey. Other things in nature, like I mean, like mold. I mean, well, I guess there might be some redeeming quality, but you could say mold is like that. Like we
I
have
mean,
there's
but
diseases like that, like cancer's like that. I
I
mean,
don't
right?
I mean,
I
maybe
mean, that's what.
I can maybe see diseases, but I mean, you can't argue against the fact that like in the beginning was the word, and the word was with God, and the word was God,
Yeah,
and he
I'm not
used his
arguing
word
against
to
that.
create all of creation, every
Yeah,
person, everything, every living being,
that I
everything.
I
And
completely agree with that. I'm not getting around
and
it
the
all.
word is Christ, and it's Jesus. And so if we connect the dots, everything is made in his image. I don't know what
But
to say about
but
cancer. I will
because
say
cancer
caught me there.
dies, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Everything living is made in his image. So in order for it to live, it has to exist in his image. Like that's where I would completely agree with you. But when it gets parasitical, something like cancer, it ceases to exist. Like it dies.
Uh,
Because it's not reflecting the image of Christ anymore. It's not reflecting
Okay.
his like the forgiving nature. It's not reflecting love anymore. And
Hmm.
that's where I would say where I would agree with Mitch. It's not it's all made through him and it has to be made through him. Like in for order for something to be created, it has to be in that image. And for it to continue to exist, it has to like exist in that state of what we talked about. Of that's why I'm always saying like mercy and truth. It has to like have both of them
Okay.
because you have to have some mercy and some love in order for things to be flexible, or will just like it'll become parasitical and devour itself. But then if it's too much mercy, it just becomes chaos. Like it has to be like that's where forgiveness comes into effect.
But like, where's that line? Is it
I don't
just,
know.
is it diseases? Because it's like, who are we to put that line on people?
Wait a minute. Am I
Like,
being a doofus here, or is it just people that are made in the image of God?
Well, all things were made through him,
that's
right? So
Okay.
it says that all creation came through him. Like everything came through Christ. So to me, that means the idea and the nature of Christ, which is like it's God's love, and Christ is basically, I would basically say it's God's forgiveness, because that's I think the
agape.
ultimate manifestation of love. To me, that seems that way, but that could be arguable for sure.
That who is it? Is it Kale that talks about agapic descent? I heard him. I
It
know he
might
said
be.
it.
All right, it's him
I
then.
know he said it.
All right, all right. I believe you. You sold me.
But it's that's the most interesting. I mean, he said a lot of really fascinating things, but like that one has just continued to come up in my thought process. But that's what's unifying the universal and the particular. That's that the agapic descent is this necessary process, and that we're talking about a innate sort of like selflessness. That's like the most robust Christology that I can even begin to come up with, is this understanding of forgiveness and mercy that is just like all encompassing, and it is what unites heaven and earth, like it's so like, but like if you start taking that in that symbology and you start placing that over top of other categories, I suppose it's kind of all encompassing.
Yeah,
I
that's what it's hard to like. I think it's hard to get at, but then once it clicks, I don't know, at least in my head, it seems to work. And that's why I can't, yeah, I can't get around Christ, because it's just like what was that prayer that Cal quoted too? Is the it, Mitch? It's the prayer of Saint Francis, Christ before me, Christ behind me. It's just like you see
Patrick,
him
yeah.
everywhere. Saint Patrick, yeah, and it's so like even in like a flower, like you could say if I say daisy, like you all have an image of a daisy, right? And you can think of a perfect daisy. So that's how I would define truth of something. It's like an ideal image. But then in order for the daisy you find out in the field to exist, it's not going to look like the one in your head. that you've made up this perfect image. So it's like
The ideal,
the ideal
sacrifice-
is sitting on a mercy seat and it's sacrificing itself for the other daisy to exist. So like that action is Christ, and that action is it pulls everything in creation together. It holds everything together. Where the ideal, the king, Christ becomes the king, and then he becomes the martyr. So the ideal is the king. So it's the perfect daisy sacrifices itself to hold all the other ones together. But it doesn't like disappear. You still understand what the ideal is. But
Mhm.
Sure. Yeah.
it's like some weird continual, like all I know how to describe it is like this, his mercy endures forever. It's like this perpetual mercy machine that's just like pulling all things to itself and still letting them all exist in their own individuality, which I think is what like even that's why I don't know that we're gonna get to an answer with this, because it's like you want things to be individual. You don't want every daisy to look exactly the same. You want them to all look kind of different. So that way you could pick one and it's your daisy. It looks different than this other person's daisy, but it's like it's still under that category of daisy because the ideal daisy is like holding it all together. It's hard for me to even explain. I don't know.
Yeah.
Is that even making sense?
It's making sense.
It makes a lot of sense to me, but I know that this is entrenched language that is like used in like if you're listening to the right content, you're coming across this stuff. But I mean, it is universal too. But like in this corner, it's this is the only place that I'm finding that people are really talking about some of this stuff. I don't know why I'm saying that. It doesn't really matter.
So I have a
But-
question for you guys too then. So if that daisy, if like everything is created through Christ, and in order for that daisy to even exist and even to continue to exist and grow properly, it needs to be kind of in this living in this state of love almost, you could say. When does it become parasitical? Like I'm talking about. When does it die? Other than old age. Like when would it become cancerous or something to that effect? Like I'm literally asking, I don't know.
Well, I almost honestly, it feels like
That may be a
uh
bad example to go with.
well, no, I just feel like most of nature doesn't become that way because I feel like if you look at the things in nature that we view as like bad, like forest fires and things, like that's a part of the ecosystem. I feel like everything has meaning and everything has a reason, and the things that don't work or the things that are damaging to the earth are usually just humans doing things, you
Yeah.
know, and it feels like we're the only ones that are really cursed here,
Well,
not all of nature.
I mean, the forest fires doesn't necessarily strike me as parasitic. Like what would strike me more as parasitic is like where you get those weird creatures that eat all their babies or something. And I'm like,
Mm.
that seems like counterintuitive. Like you're literally kind of devouring yourself at that point because you're devouring your future.
I guess,
But
but they still exist. It's not like they're
they
like
do
going
still exist.
extinct.
But
It
they
feels
will
like
cease to exist, though, I guess, if they continue on that
yeah,
path, right? I guess.
like what, like bugs that do that,
I guess maybe there's bugs.
or like rats.
I don't know if there's certain spiders that do. Maybe rats do. Um,
I mean, some do, not all do, but yeah,
Mm.
some do.
Bunnies
yeah,
do.
bunnies.
Bunnies do
Oh,
that.
gross.
Yeah,
That's bunnies.
I don't know.
They have enough babies. They can get away with it.
I don't know, it just feels like but like obviously some bunnies don't do that because bunnies still exist. So it's
Yeah,
not
right.
like a thing that happens all the time. But I guess you could argue that about humans. It's like we don't always kill each other. We don't always have diseases because we still exist, you know? So
Yeah.
like I guess you could argue that too. But it feels like from what I understand, we're the only ones who really are cursed. And if anything else is wrong, it's because we've tainted it.
We've
It
tainted it.
feels like.
I
I think
think
that's right.
I think
What
I
are
could
you
agree with that.
clutching? What are you clutching in your mind, Mitch?
Yeah, Mitch looks like he's ready to go.
Looks like he's holding
Let's
on.
hear
to
it.
Well, pretty far back there. So it seems to me that there should be a distinction, or that there is a distinction. And we should make that distinction between humans and the rest of creation. Does that sound right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then to use the people instead of the daisies when they become, I guess my thought on that question would be maybe the first thing that they could do to go in the wrong direction towards, I can't even remember the way you phrased the question about what can the daisy do to
Be
no longer be.
parasitical. To
Okay.
become parasitical or
And I don't know if parasitical
That
is
might
the
not be
best
the
way
right
to
word.
describe the ultimate crime here, but
yeah, it's probably not. that.
I think would say to not acknowledge the ideal.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Yeah, there's definitely danger in that.
So if you think about those that were considered righteous, back in time, like a Noah or an Abraham, it was because they were acknowledging, or whatever faith might encompass, but the first thing that comes to mind is an acknowledgement. So maybe that would be the first thing I would think of as Daisy gone wrong.
Well, what is it, the ideal? Is it like Christ, or
Well,
is
I
it
wish I hadn't
getting
even
Christ?
said that, because I don't like the language of saying the ideal.
Uh-huh.
Well, it might sound like scary language, but I completely agree with you. And that's why I say if you lose that, that's why I say then it becomes chaos. Like
What
if
if-
you lose
If you lose your model, if you lose that who you're supposed to be imaging, yes, then you'll be destroyed.
because then you have nothing to aim at anymore, right? Because then you have nothing to like.
So it might be that you aren't recognizing the thing you're to be imaging, which to me seems a little unlikely. It's more likely to me that you're recognizing it and thinking that you know how to be a daisy better than King Daisy.
King Daisy, I like this. That's gonna be the title of this.
I don't want to interrupt, but I do have to go. But you
I
guys
know. I was just
have-
about to bring that up. Here, can I read something to you though, real quick for you?
Sure.
Well, it's not. I had something I wrote actually that was
Is it a
very
poem?
related to this topic. No, it's not. It's not. Not another gay poem. Oh, I lost these pages. No, it was oh, did I just lose my pages? My book's falling apart. This is my Fantasties book. Lots of pieces. But it's from this, and it was the last chapter I read. And so just something to think on. You might disagree with it, but I actually read it the other night because it came up again. And it says, then I first knew the delight of being lowly, of saying to myself, I am what I am, nothing more. I have failed. I said, I have lost myself. Would it had been my shadow. I looked round. The shadow. Wait, am I going to ruin this?
That's okay.
Okay, I looked round. The shadow was nowhere to be seen. Ere long, I learned that it was not myself, but only my shadow that I had lost. I learned that it is better, 1,000-fold, for a proud man to fall and be humbled, than to hold up his head in his pride and fancied innocence. I learned that he who will be a hero will barely be a man, that he will be nothing but a doer of his work, is sure of his manhood. In nothing was my ideal lowered or dimmed or grown less precious. I only saw it too plainly, to set myself for a moment beside it. Indeed, my ideal soon became my life, whereas formerly my life had consisted in a vain attempt to behold, if not my ideal in myself, at least myself in my ideal. Now, however, I took at first what perhaps was a mistaken pleasure in despising and degrading myself. Another self seemed to arise, like a white spirit from a dead man, from the dumb and trampled self of the past. Doubtless this self must again die to be buried, and again from its tomb spring a winged child. But of this my history has yet bears not the record. Self will come to life even in the slaying of self, but there is ever something deeper and stronger than it, which will emerge at last from the unknown abysses of the soul. Will it be as a solemn gloom burning with eyes, or a clear morning after the rain, or a smiling child that finds itself nowhere and everywhere? So that's all. Sorry, it's such a weird. He writes in such a weird language. It's kind of hard to follow,
Oh.
probably.
I love that. I think that's really good.
Yeah,
I feel like it kind of gets at both ideas
does
of what
a
we've
little.
been going at, the back and
Yeah.
forth there.
It's like I don't entirely disagree with it, but I
Yeah.
don't.
There's like parts where I think you would.
Not
Like
ready
I'll
to
read this
sign
sentence. I'm
off.
like, Natalie, I'll probably disagree with them. That's
But
it.
then
Then he
there's
gets at
parts you
another
read that
part.
you're like, Mitchell disagree with this. Yeah. All right, I gotta go.
But
I
yeah,
have to get
get
up
some
early.
sleep. Yeah.
I'm
Sorry to
sorry.
keep you up.
This is fun
So,
though. Keep
yeah.
talking.
Yeah. Thanks
I'll
for
Very
listen
doing
to
this.
the rest of it.
Okay. All right. I can keep going if you guys want. I don't care. I got spiders out here. What are your thoughts, Luke?
Oh man, I feel
Got
like
so quiet.
I had some thoughts, and then my dog came up, and then I got distracted in
Ember?
other animals, and then I have no idea where things went after that, but it's okay.
Alright.
But
Why you do refer to the ideal to God as the ideal? Is that usually what you mean, or do you just mean it as truth, or do you mean
Me.
truth, God, and ideal is the same? Yeah.
You're asking me. Well, I would say Christ is the ideal. That's what I would say.
But Christ, ideal is not Christ. What am
No.
Christ is the ideal, but Christ is not ideal. Christ doesn't equal ideal. Like,
I guess I see what you're saying. Well, there's so many different virtues, right? I think that's where I struggle with it because, or maybe I don't
but
know that I struggle
why
with
do you
it.
need to equal Christ to a virtue?
I don't, but I think we do. Like I'm saying, he encompasses all virtues, right?
yeah,
But it's hard for me to aim at all virtues. So like any virtue could be an ideal. That's why I think like maybe this is where I just kind of, and we could disagree with this. I feel like we're all designed differently by God as different parts of the body. So like one person might see this certain virtue of Christ as just like the best ideal to go for, or like they just really want to work, or even at moments of your life, you're just like, the best thing to strive for right now is patience. And I see the patience of Christ and I'm going to aim at it and go for it. And so that kind of becomes your ideal. That becomes your main focus, your goal, your
Yeah, I
telos
see
in a
what you're
point.
saying.
And so it's like, but Christ encompasses all of them, but it's so hard for you to get at all of them, really, you know? And so you
because
can have one and then, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just I'm imagining the imagery of like Christ as a spotless lamb. He was blameless, like there was no sin in him. So like that's that idea of the ideal, I suppose.
Yeah. So you could look at righteousness or sinlessness as like the ideal too, you know? And so it's like, I mean, that's good, but you're always going to fall short of that. So
Yeah,
that ideal is going to have to die to itself. But then what could be even worse is like, God forbid you actually did get that and you did actually live a sinless life. Then you would have to do what Christ did. Like, you know what? Or like you said, Mitch, earlier, then you become better than King Daisy, you know, then you're better
No,
than Christ.
you say if you reach the ideal of righteousness, it has to die to itself. Oh no, if you don't reach the ideal, what did you say? If you don't reach the ideal of righteousness, then
The ideal kind of has to die of itself to hold you to it still, because otherwise it's just going to condemn you,
yeah.
because the ideal
maybe
judges you, you know.
Have you heard about the saying Michael Martin? I heard him say it today in a podcast. He said, "The ideal is the enemy of the good." And I had never heard somebody say,
What is that?
or
The
no,
ideal-
no, no. He said the perfect is the enemy of the good,
Perfect
which is
enemy.
the ideal. So
Yeah.
it's this weird way in which, like, I mean, talk about our own like shortcomings. We have a tendency to measure ourselves against what is perfect. We measure ourselves against Christ, but Christ, his very purpose and meaning is to bridge that gap so that we do not need to become perfect. We
Yeah.
don't need to reach for the ideal.
I don't think I think what you're saying is to bridge the gap is correct, but I don't think your conclusion is right where I want to land, because
Okay.
when Jason says if you don't reach the ideal, then the ideal has to die. No, if you don't reach the ideal, that's where Christ bridges the gap, and his righteousness is added to you. And so I do think we need to be striving for perfection, knowing full well we're not going to reach it, and that Christ has done the work of adding his own righteousness to us.
But there's this other side of where Christ also descends, and that's the agapic descent that I'm talking about, where Christ is moving away from the ideal to basically sublimate, like what's the language? What would be the right language? Is basically subjugate himself. Like his capacity is full bore. I mean, the ideal, but the way in which he takes this movement of descent into the real, the particular, the material, the concrete. This is a movement that is beneath his capacity. I don't know how to talk about it.
Well,
It's very hard language. It's tricky language. It almost feels like dangerous language sometimes. Where it's, that's why like you being in
It's
this
dangerous
discussion.
to talk about, guy.
Well, like
I think so.
Because we're not really saying, because I get what Luke is saying, and it's not. It could come across as like saying that Christ went and became sinful in order to be more like me, but it's like it's not that at all. He still
I
like
didn't hear
holds. You didn't get that? Okay. Yeah.
But
Like the agapic descent is not that at all. It's like he
No.
still is the ideal. He just comes to
he subjugates himself to present perfection as we can even understand it, because we're not God, but there is a I don't think if a human is perfect, if a human does everything perfectly, then they are equal to God. But so
but
I think
would they have a claim?
they would be able to boast in their righteousness.
Yeah, but they can't.
No, they
Because
can't.
they're the creature. But
Exactly.
it's like it's weird. But it's weird
they're not going to
because
be God, but he does present perfection. He does present human perfection, and we are called to be perfect as well. And we're not going to make it, but he has added that his righteousness unto us, so that we can be justified before God.
I think that's my big problem with theosis and deification is, and I'm sorry if this took a weird, I'm not trying to like
No, I think this is spot on. This is something I want to get into.
This is my problem with it is like I can't make this final leap where I can ascend. Christ has to descend. Like there's this way in which I don't make this like grand claim of being this, coming into perfection in and of myself. It is Christ who makes me like and this is where it gets into Calvinism. This is where it gets into like, for me, I mean, I'm still struggling with this big time because like, I don't like this idea that I have some, like, I understand that I have intrinsic worth and that I am made in the image of God and all this stuff, but I don't believe I'm Christ. Like, there's something that is very clear to me that I am not Christ. Like, and I need Christ. And so like that's, I just, that glaring like reality just is just so hard for me to like grapple with because I can't like, so like this idea that I could somehow like deify and I know that's like the language is way more nuanced and maybe I don't understand it in the way I need to in order to like fully embrace it, but it is very hard for me to get past some of this stuff.
I mean, I completely agree with you. Where one thing like and this is probably, this might just be my own context. I think if I got into conversations with other people about theosis, really be a lot of people that maybe would disagree with me, but I don't see it as like a sinlessness, or I mean, I would hope that it encompasses that, but that's not how I perceive it.
Sure.
Because I think it is that agapic descent that pulls you up to it. So like it's that's what makes you pure. And so it's not that you exist and you're sinless, because he says go and sin no more. But it's
Sure.
like the thing that really, like, and I had to rework this in my mind, because every time I would hear perfection, and this is why it bothered me so much, is because Jesus would say, be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect. And then every time, almost every single time I was in church, if someone would quote that, they would almost just throw it out. They'd be like, well, Jesus obviously knew you can't be perfect. So it was like almost just like this, let's just ignore this. Like, and then it just always bothered me. I'm like, well, God doesn't say something just will, like, he doesn't, it's not just like his words have meaning and depth. Like there's something going on there. So then, but then I got to, when you look at Luke, it's the same Sermon on the Mount, and he says, be merciful. And so that's when I was like, okay, there seems to be some connection here with mercy and perfection. And perfection is also usually translated complete. So if like you're coming, and he says, I go and learn what this means. I desire mercy and not sacrifice. So it's like becoming perfect, like forgive. I've used this phrase before, forgiveness makes perfection. Like it makes, like it actually, forgiveness is a power, it's a force that makes perfect what's wrong. Like it makes the unclean clean again. And so
Yeah.
it's like that's how you become perfect again. It's through you forgiving others, which isn't like getting rid of truth or the ideal or whatever, because the forgiveness and repentance kind of like have to go hand in hand, but it's through that is what actually makes perfect and bring things back to imperfection. So that, to me, that is theosis. So like, and I just heard Peugeot say this. I wish I could figure out what video he said it on, but apparently there's this idea, and I've never heard of this before. So there's the eternal, like, Virgin Mary, right? So she's always a virgin. She's always sinless, always pure, untouched, holy, dedicated, whatever. Like this perfect image we have. But then apparently there's this other idea, and I hadn't heard this before, but there's Mary the whore. And I was like, that is so perfect. That's absolutely amazing. Because you have Mary the Virgin, and then you have Mary Magdalene that had 7 devils, that was like a prostitute. And it's like, I think Jacob said it in one of his videos. He said, why didn't Jesus marry Mary Magdalene? Like, why wouldn't he do that? And my first thought was just like, he will. Like, that's the whole point. Like, that's theosis, is he's going to take the whore and
Yeah.
purify her into a virgin again, present her as a chaste virgin to Christ. And it's like, and it's through that repentance of her pouring out the like feet on it, the oil and wiping it. It's through this like working of the repentance and the forgiveness coming together, then the agapic descent that pulls you up to that like purifies you or something. I don't know. To me, that's what perfection is the working of his forgiveness, also along with true repentance, like true repentance, I guess.
Sure. Yeah.
Which that's why, like, the more I think about it that way, I'm like, perfection doesn't, I don't know, it just doesn't seem like, or in theosis doesn't seem like that far away. Like it seems like it could actually happen. Like it seems like it could be a thing.
Yeah. I remember when you said that too, that theosis isn't that far away. Just very helpful.
Yeah. Because if it's a matter of some sort of virtue I have to reach, like I'm like you, I don't think I'll ever reach it. Like I think I mean, maybe, I don't know, Mitch, you're being really quiet. I'd like for you to disagree with me. Like maybe through enough prayer or something, maybe through enough prayer, I could reach that virtue. But then I guess I still have to struggle. But like, well, did I get there just because I prayed more than someone else? And then do I have something? Then you're kind of stuck with that as well, as like, do I have something to boast about? Like, I don't really know.
No, you're spot on, man. You're exactly right when you say you won't reach it. But I say that you should
Yeah.
strive for it.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Because otherwise, I think the world falls apart. Because then you.
But I'm curious what the power is that draws us to this teleological like goal So like there's this ascent that we're trying to make, but there is and man, this gets into one of those Grail Country videos they posted today or yesterday or whatever, but like the dog that's trying to ascend and the monkey that's trying to descend. Okay,
What?
never mind.
No, go into this. I'm like, you piqued my interest now. I gotta hear this. Is this the new tarot one they did?
Yeah,
I haven't
yeah.
listened to this one yet. Okay, I gotta get
Oh,
on
you're
this.
gonna geek when you hear it because it's
A dog and a monkey. Oh man.
probably pretty similar to our conversation that we're having right now. But I don't know where I was going with that. Dang it.
I want to hear it.
Well, you're talking about what is the force that draws us
The
to that?
power.
Yeah, like what is so like if we know we will not be able to reach perfection, there's still, at least for me, this draw. Like I know, like
Mhm.
every time I turn around, I'm like effing up. You know what I'm trying to say? Like
Yeah.
I'm a train wreck. Like, you know, there's still like I want to become. I want to be like I know, and maybe it's a testament to because like I'm constantly in a state of growth. Like I've conquered some things in the past, you know, and I keep on moving and all that stuff. But like I feel like I've also like survived death to a certain degree, you know, like there's like a like there's that very real point in my life I didn't want to live anymore, and like I got through that, and like maybe that'll happen again, who knows. It kind of happens every single day, but at the same time, like
I shouldn't be laughing, but I am.
no, but like I wake up at 6 o'clock in the morning and I don't want to wake up. But by the time, you know, 10 o'clock rolls around or 9 o'clock rolls around, I don't want to go to bed. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like it's just like life's so good again, you know, but like I will move through like so many emotions throughout one day.
I feel you.
And all that to say is, what is it that like keeps, even though we know we're not going to reach that perfection, we're still striving for it. And I think it's because, well, I don't know, I'm curious what you guys think actually.
It's got to
Well-
be a couple of things. Go ahead, Jason.
No, I was just gonna say before you go, Mitch, now we're in competition with Grail Country to come up with a better metaphor than the monkey and the dog. So take it away.
But aren't they're borrowing from cards?
Yeah, we
They
need something here. Let's get it.
They're borrowed from like Arcanum. So like this, you gotta like barter with the mystery schools to come up with
We
something.
gotta outdo him right here, Mitch. We gotta outdo
Well,
him.
I don't have anything except I was thinking it's got to be a couple of things. One, it's got to be we've understood what's destructive about going in the opposite direction, and we've understood away from what we know to be perfection. And we've understood that there's something life-giving in going towards those things which offer perfection. And I think more often than not, we get that on an intellectual level, even if we can't realize that in other elements of our consciousness. It's like, yeah, I know this is going to be helpful to me, and I know this is going to be hurtful to me, but at the same time, there's a little zap when I go in this direction that's immediate, and instead of the slog when I go in this direction. And then I think there's probably a genuine desire to please the Lord that we love. It's interesting to think about what animates that desire towards the perfection we know we can't reach.
Yeah.
And probably some bad things animate it too.
Yeah, maybe.
Nature of the beast.
Yeah. Well, I think it might, and at least my understanding is like there has to be some sort of draw. The good, the beautiful, and the true. I mean, we have these. I don't know how to talk about these either.
I'm really stuck on the beautiful one.
Yeah.
I don't understand it.
There seems to be a huge emphasis on the beautiful one right now. I feel like going around, or I feel like I hear about that one a lot more, which I'm not against that. It just seems like
I just understand beauty is and how deceptive it can be, but I think it might be that I'm getting their rendition of beauty wrong.
Well, there's also like the beauty of imperfection too, and asymmetry, and like the like Eastern sort of like version of beauty that is not symmetry but asymmetry, and like so then that's
Craig sent me an awesome video the other day on this very subject, and it did give a definition for beauty in this context. Uniformity, no, unity of form and splendor. But even that's pretty ambiguous.
Yeah, the good, the true, and the beautiful. And this, like, I don't know the context of it. Like, it seemed like people have very good grip on it in their head, especially like maybe Catholics and like Orthodox. But to me, it's I in my head, it always gets to the same thing. It's just another
Yeah.
ideal, another virtue sitting on the throne. And to me, it still has to become the martyr. Because I'm like, what is Snow White then? Like, you look at that story. Who's the fairest of them all? Isn't she seeking beauty? And then she wants to kill the most beautiful, so
I
she
don't know
can
if she's
become.
seeking unity of form and splendor. Or maybe
That's
she is.
true. Yeah, that's true. So that's a good point.
I believe that when people are talking about the good, the beautiful, and the true, they're talking about God. They're talking about Christ. They're not.
Yeah.
At least for me, that's the language. But I can.
Yeah.
I what I do is I take it off. I take it and I use that language to then communicate with other people who may not have a Christology that's
Yeah.
informing
That's
that
good.
sort of understanding, so then I can actually communicate with like way more people when I'm talking about the good, the beautiful, and the true.
Yeah.
Or if I'm talking about virtue, that extends even further. So it's like we can all agree that hospitality is a good thing, or what have you, you know, or like
Yeah.
Is virtue included in good? I'm sorry, just curious.
that is, I mean, that's a linchpin conversation right there. But no, I think it is. So but yeah, I would say,
I didn't know if it meant morally good. Because I could also think of good and beautiful as being categorically similar. And do they bleed into each other at all? Or are they clearly distinct from each other?
The good and the beautiful,
the true and the beautiful, the three of them.
I think they're supposed to bleed into each other, from my understanding of it.
Like, because they're encapsulated in the figure of Christ. So like there's, or like maybe encapsulated's a weird term to use, but like
I like it.
They're
it's like a burrito.
You can swallow the pill. Like it's a big one though. It's a horse pill. So no, but what I'm trying to say is, I guess it like I'm saying that Christ transcends. Christ colors our understanding of what the good, the beautiful, and the true is. So like that, you don't even have a conception of what the good, the beautiful, and the true is without Christ. And so like, yeah, this is weird. And when you're talking to somebody who doesn't understand that, like you can't start with that.
With what?
I guess Christ. Like,
because I think at this point in human history, Christ would be what is encompassed in Christ is more universally understood than what is encompassed in those three words in the way that we're using them. Unless there's not
at this point in history. That's an interesting argument.
Well,
very.
I when I hear good, true, good, and beautiful, it's too wide open for me to even put a finger on it. Like I want to know, okay, well, what things are true, which things are good, and which things are beautiful. And I don't even think that I don't have a strong sense that it's systematized at all.
There's a huge subjectivity there, and that's not going to be.
I guess
I like the way this guy in the video, I sent you the video that Craig sent me. It said that beauty has an objectivity that requires a subjectivity to understand it. This is pretty interesting.
I would love to hear that, because
I sent it to you guys. Yeah, it's about 30 minutes.
But I know that like Christ, even just saying the name Christ has yeah, like a lot of people have such a bad taste in their mouth about Christ because of, I guess, just hurt with the church. And
Yeah.
it has nothing to do with Christ. So it's weird because sometimes you actually have to dance around uh using his name in order to actually get to him, because it's like their
Yeah.
context of Christ is just uh a, like the Crusades or something, you know. Like I have an uncle that's kind of like this. He'll always say stuff about like usually all the bad things the church has done, and but then he'll say something like, well, my mom's like he'll talk about my mom, his niece, and he's like, she's actually like the best Christian I've ever seen, because she doesn't go around killing people in the Crusades or something. But that's like his context for Christianity, and so like that's his context for like when people bring up Christians or Jesus or something like that. It's like people's minds will immediately jump there. So I understand using good, true, and beautiful to kind of like, yeah, I guess a different language to skirt around it. I'm not against those terms either. I just don't think I have the same
No,
my mind doesn't go the same place as it seems to do with other people, because they seem to have it organized as a better formula or something in their head. I don't know.
Do you think it gives too much? And I don't know what its origin is, or if there's like uh, a scholarship surrounding it that I'm not understanding properly. But just on point blank, it seems like it would give too much agency to the individual to decide what those things are.
sure.
I see what you're
Yeah.
saying. Like
No,
because you could you describe the fruit that same way? It was I think maybe they even do that though. Maybe they point that out. Like the fruit was, well, it was like pleasing
It's
to the eye. It was good for food.
good for acquiring
Yeah.
knowledge or
And
wisdom.
knowledge, the truth. Yeah. So it does have all those three things. So it is very,
yeah.
whoops.
Well, I think this concept though is pretty interesting of trying to find, okay, if we all if one recognizes that life is found in Christ and that he is the gate or the door, and people want to divert people towards life, you know, the way that you do that is, I'm sure it gets pretty nuanced.
Well, dude, why am I thinking right now? I'm thinking be wise as serpents and what is it? Gentle as doves?
Innocent as does.
Innocent doves?
Maybe it is gentle. I thought it was innocent.
I think it's
I
innocent.
think-
Yeah. But gentle works. Gentle dove.
And I'm thinking within the mind frame of an evangelical right now. Oh God. But it's very much like, what am I gonna say? But
You're trying to be the serpent that's presenting the fruit to
like
people.
there's a way in which like there is a like I even think about Jesus using the terminology like fishers of men, and like
Bait and
Yeah,
switch.
there's a part where Paul says, I caught you by cunning, being crafty. I
yeah,
caught you by cunning. Yeah, yeah.
there's a bait and switch that yeah, like you guys are using the language too right now, like that's the language that I don't even want to talk about, but is available to us maybe. And like it does encompass like oftentimes it's like I have a huge community of like probably the largest community that I participate in is like LGBTQ plus, you know, and so it's like, and all of them have been so effing burned by the church, you know, and they might have grown up in the same sort of evangelical trappings that I did, you know, and it's like they threw out that baby so deep into the bathwater that like like it's just it's a joke, you know, but it's like, but I'm still like participating in what I understand is like all these Christian concepts of like love and community and hospitality and yeah, you know, and I'm just and it's just a fascinating occurrence in my life. But all that to say is, I don't even know why I brought that up, to be honest with you. But it's just like this weird thing where I also feel weird because it's like at what point am I gonna bait and switch you? Like what point am I gonna or but like also I don't think switching is the right terminology, but
This-
because I
You're
don't
gonna
think
get canceled.
yeah that's a requirement. But like at what point am I gonna reintroduce Christ in a way that is actually like truly a Christ that embodies an understanding of agapic love that is is the same love that I experience and is the same love you experience. And uh it's weird. But all that's maybe I shouldn't have brought any of that up. I'm gonna get canceled real quick.
I'm just
It's
kidding.
sad.
I was joking.
But
Don't worry, I'd get canceled before you did for sure, man. I say some really offensive things sometimes. So.
but I'm trying to, but I also am like we're talking about the same things when we get into these deep discussions. Like even though you don't want to use the terminology in regards to Christology, I'm interpreting all these things through this like Christology that's like embedded in who I am, and it's embedded in who you are, but like you don't acknowledge it and I do acknowledge it. And it's like I'm not gonna like force it into you because it's already there, but I'll help like maybe potentially bring it out of you. Like I don't know if that makes any sort of sense, but
No, I mean it does. I think it does. It's a hard thing to get around too. Because if you're dealing with somebody, I mean, I know what it's like to be blind, especially from resentment towards the church. I mean, I've
yeah,
had that before, and just resentment in general, any type of resentment really blinds your eyes to a lot of things. And then it's like when just someone who's blind, it's like there's like, and this was kind of something I wanted. This is probably a different topic too, but I brought this up to you, Mitch, like as a question because I hadn't thought about this before. But like, there's kind of like a self deception, and then there's like a believing the lie, and I don't know if they're different. Like, there's times where I can like be willfully going against the truth, and then there's times where like I've done that so long where I like actually believe my own lie at that point, and then it's like how I feel like it's harder to call me to the truth at that point when I just don't see it anymore. And it's like, how do you do that to someone? Because you could say it to somebody, uh, hey, here's the truth. You know this is right, that's wrong, and they could know it. But then when you just don't see it. I don't know. It's weird. I'm not even sure what I'm getting at. I feel like I'm just fumbling over my words now. But that's what I mean, where like I feel like forgiveness is even offensive at that point too. And Christ is offensive too.
yeah,
Because forgiveness like demands repentance. Because if somebody's I mean, if you went up to anybody in the LGBTQ and they said, "Hey, I live this lifestyle," and you said, "It's okay, Jesus forgives," or you can't really say that's okay, but if you said, "I forgive you" or something, it's like I feel like they'd get offended. They'd be like, "Well, I don't need your forgiveness." Like, well,
what
I
do
never,
you
I
know?
didn't say I was doing anything wrong. Like, or if or any, I mean, you could kind of compare that to any sin. If somebody's response is, if you just tell them something about yourself and you just think it's about yourself, you don't think it's a sin, and they say, "I forgive you." It's like,
Well,
well, screw off. I don't need forgiveness. It's not from you. So like
this
just Christ
also,
entering the world, I think is offensive in that way of just like him existing says you need a savior. And it's like, oh. And so that's where it kind of gets at your pride, I think. But um
but there's also this like cosmological understanding of Christ that is undergirds all of reality, which we all acknowledge,
mhm.
even implicitly.
Yeah, I
So
see what you're saying.
it's like this. And so like there's this weird thing where I've held myself back in regards to like participating in Christian community with people that don't identify as Christians and Mitch, you might disagree here because understand that there's an importance to like actual Christian and community, and like I've heard you talk about that too, and like I acknowledge that, but like there's also this like way in which if I am only interested in like Christian community, I'm closing myself off to like this larger community and participation and loving community and an acceptance of of like even the like foreigner or the stranger into my like I don't even know how to explain it, but what I'm trying to say is like I've not really looked at this whole thing clearly for a long time, and like I'm just more recently being like, okay, like what's going on in my head that makes me like differentiate the community that I have with my LGBTQ friends and the community that I have in the church. And like I see the separation because one has a super strong impulse against anything that the institutional church has ever presented and could, like if there was anything like if I I don't even know what I'm trying to say, and maybe this is a bad conversation to have, but I'm trying to get at like how I can still participate in potentially these universals or these forms or these ideals that are actually still the bedrock
Mhm.
everyone's participation at a universal level. That is like you can't even abscond these things. Like you can't get away from them. They're always present.
Yeah.
And so like they're just and here I am trying to like split the dice, or
Yeah.
whatever. Like
Yeah, it's like it's something deeper than morality or
yeah.
something, which is a very, like I said, this gets in a dangerous language. It seems like that's just a dangerous thing to say because it's something higher and deeper than morality, but still like calls you to a moral like what virtues and everything. Like it doesn't do away with morality or something. It almost, but it's
Yeah.
the depth of it's like yeah, there's something there, and I know what you're trying to get at. That's hard. I was gonna say though, Mitch is probably closer to where you're at than I am because he's always trying to get me to come to Atlanta. He's like, "Come to Atlanta, man," and I'm like, "Screw you guys! I'm going to the woods. The world's too weird."
Dude, yeah. Run for the hills or head for
I know.
the urban metropolis.
I know. I'm like, you can't get me to go to the cities. No way. No.
If
Won't
we're
get
in
you here.
if we're in our apocalyptic moment, both would be salvific journeys. Do
Do
you want
you?
to?
I got a question for you, Luke. Do you feel like you're like sometimes torn back and forth between the two? Like you're talking about church and the other communities or something?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do. And it seems like because I think the language changes so drastically between the two places that I participate in it that it and I feel like my own identity and who I present myself as changes so drastically that it's a incommensurable like collision of my who I am. Like
I
so
get it.
I don't like I can participate over here and I'm a-okay. I can participate over here and I'm a-okay, but like inside myself, I'm being like ripped apart, and that exactly where I need to fucking be.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I don't know. No, it doesn't bother me at all. I just wonder, like, it makes me think of the whole idea of just like mediating and being a mediator, and if
Yeah.
that's kind of like a fractal pattern, and it sucks. I can read this thing I wrote because I actually wrote this while I was in India. I don't know why, and it was you can completely disagree with it. Like anybody listening, completely disagree because I was just exploring this idea because I'd never thought about it before, and then actually I came back when I came back, I listened to a Grail Country thing and they were talking about mediators and then being like peacemakers and stuff. And I was like, man, I just like wrote something about it. But it says, because I was just thinking how awful it is. It's a terrible It's a terrible feeling. Oh, but it says, so I just wrote mediator, and it says, just like the little girl who longs to be a mermaid, she knows not yet what she. Can you hear me? Oh, man. Okay, I didn't know if it cut out. It says, just like the little girl who longs to be a mermaid, she knows not yet what she worships. Yet who can say her desire is wrong, but rather that it is only a deep longing based on symbols and eternal principles not yet understood by the child, but perhaps God given to her own heart, and she is called to the sea, into the awesome fathoms of unknown depths. She stands with one foot in the waters and the other on the land. May her hand be raised to heaven. She must remain a dweller of both worlds, as a cord of compassion between the two, thus making peace. How terribly awful it is to be a mediator. Thus is the wild one, who sleeps in the grass, yet can scarcely understand the cutting of it down to build the thatches of the humble hut, if only to shield one from the thundering Father above. Or so is the one who longs to go forth as a shining day, but finds himself ever enveloped by thick clouds and gazing dimly through a dense fog. Or the one who longs to rise with the dawn, but alas, every evening he sees the moon and cries out, ah, my silver lady, lead me to your darkness, for I must run among the shadows. My maiden ghost, how I tremble before your soft glow, for I am but a child of the night. And that's all I wrote. That's as far as I got. So I don't know. It's just kind of like that whole feeling of being like stuck between the two. Like even
Yeah.
then with day and night, you feel like you're like a night owl, but you're like, oh, this isn't right. I shouldn't do this. I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't exist as a night owl, but
Well,
I don't know.
there's that weird thought where like that tension that we exist in is actually this like super healthy thing. Like like for instance, I'm an adult now or whatever. I have a kid and all that, but like I just want to be a child.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know,
Yeah, but even that I think is mediating too. Like I have my friend Michael, everybody that's ever met him has just been like he is the everybody will say he's got a gift for being with kids. Like he's taller than me, bigger than me, covered in tattoos, and like I don't know what it is, but he could meet a kid, and it's like immediately. Like when we first went to India, he came with us. All the kids were like in their shells, clammy, like just not
he brought
opening up at all. As soon as he stepped on the scene, it was like I don't even know what he did. Like I could do the same things he did, it wouldn't work. But all the kids were just laughing and playing, and they were like he just immediately connected the adults to the children like that. It was just like this, yeah. So
That's
even
awesome.
that, like you're talking about, just adult and being a kid, it's like there's mediating there as well. Which reminds me of the turning the, which I think is not just that, but it reminds me of that verse, turning the hearts of the fathers to the children, and the children. What is that in Malachi or something? Where it talks about that. I don't know.
Remember?
Connecting the generations to each other.
Hmm.
Anyways, you got anything to say, Mitch? You've been quiet for a while.
I caught that silver lady reference, man.
You did?
I
Yeah.
said that the other night in a text.
I did.
Yeah, what was that?
Yeah, it was like you were looking at you're like the moon's so beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
She's my silver lady. Well, sometimes she's like a copper color. It's very strange. The moon's a weird thing. That's why I
Yeah.
like her so much. It's mysterious.
She changes her mineral compound.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, but I might hop off here in a little bit though. But can I read this thing? Because I don't know. I'm just basically reading it for Natalie's sake too, and I have no idea what it says. I just know there's a fairy tale called The Singing Bones. Are you guys familiar with this?
Mm-mm.
Okay, I've never read it before. I just know there was a podcast once, and the podcast was called The Singing Bones, and so I was like, and all it was telling fairy tales, and I knew one of them that she went over was called Singing Bones, but I never listened to it. So I'll share the screen though.
I love the title.
All right, let's see. So it says The Singing Bone. So I have no idea what this is going to be like. I guess it's by Brothers Grimm.
Oh, wow. I love it.
Synopsis: a boar lays waste to a country, and two brothers set out to kill it, with the prize being given to the princess's hand in marriage. The younger meets a dwarf who gives him a spear, and with it he kills the boar. Carrying the body off, the man meets his older brother, who had joined with the others to drink until he felt brave. The older brother lures him in, gives him a drink, and learns of the younger brother's adventure. They then set out to deliver the body to the king, but on passing a bridge, the older kills the younger and buries his body beneath it. He takes the boar himself to the king and marries the king's daughter as prize. One day, a shepherd sees a bone under the bridge and uses it to make a mouthpiece for a horn, which sings of the brother's fate. Ah, dear shepherd, you are blowing your horn with one of my bones, which night and morn lie still unburied beneath the wave, where I was thrown in a sandy grave. I killed the wild boar, and my brothers slew me, and gained the princess by pretending 'twas he. The shepherd takes this marvel to the king, who has the bridge examined, and the bones of the deceased brother are found. The older brother is not able to deny his action and is drowned as punishment. The younger brother's bones are reburied in a beautiful grave. I don't know that's how relevant that is, but I really like that.
It's
a fun-
Jacob. It's Jacob and Esau.
Yeah, it's a fun story. Yeah, man, that gets at what I was telling you earlier, Mitch. That whole Abel thing. God, his brother's blood calls me from the ground.
Hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, so I don't know if you saw it. I had a conversation, Luke, with Jacob, and he told me that the same, Ecclesiastes says vanity of vanities, all is vanity under the
Mhm.
sun. That word vanity is the same word for Abel.
What?
Yeah, and so like it's just isn't that nuts? Like the more I think about it, the heavier that gets, because I'm like, you have Cain kills his brother Abel. So like, well, first, so Abel's name I guess means breath, and Jacob said it specifically means the exhale of breath.
Okay.
And so the difference in their sacrifices too. I'm like, what's the difference? And one of them has breath, the other one doesn't, which is kind of interesting. Like a sheep would have breath. Um, but then he kills Abel, and then God says, your brother's blood cries to me from the ground. And then he says, cursed are you from the ground. It shall no longer yield its strength to you. And then Abel has to go out, and it's like just the thought of everything under the sun crying out his brother's name, like everything under the sun is Abel. It's vanity, vanity. And it's like, you're cursed from the earth. You kill your brother, and everything you see is like that exhale of your brother's name, just like everything is vanity, vanity. I'm like, man, that's heavy.
Holy moly.
Yeah, it's always blowing that horn, singing bones. Man, that's rough.
Yeah.
I gotta
Wow.
keep thinking on that one. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I'll have to think of for a while.
Thanks so much for doing this, guys. Thanks, Luke. It's been a while, man. I'm glad you hopped on here.
It's
Yeah,
the first time I've gotten to hang out with you, Luke. I really
know.
enjoyed it.
Oh yeah, that's right. You weren't there last time. He thought you were. He called one of us Mitch.
Yeah, I thought
He was getting off he was like, it's great to meet you, Mitch and Adam, talking to Craig
Awesome.
and John.
I got both names. Oh, that was awesome.
Yeah, it was great.
No, it was a pleasure. It was a real pleasure.
Likewise, very much.
Yeah. Thanks for doing this, guys. You guys have a great
Talk
night.
to you guys again soon.
Yeah.
I hope
Hopefully
so.
we'll get back into Fantasties at some point. So that'd be good.
Yeah. Let me know
Yeah.
what chapter you guys are on at some
Well,
point.
I think we stopped at I want to say it was chapter 6. I was looking before when we
Sounds
started
right,
this.
yeah.
Let me just say, because
Because
I
I
think
think I read 7 and 8 after that, and that's where I kind of stopped.
yeah, because it was like I think we had that talk, and then I said I'll prepare us for the next one, and I read that weird little intro about the red lips traveling over a cheek like worms or something. I think that's where I left off, but I could be wrong. But I think let me see. I'm pretty sure we're at 6. Thy red lips like worms travel over thy cheek. I think that was what the next one we were supposed to get into. But we might have got into it. But we did skip ahead and try to do the magic mirrors conversation. You were there for that one though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, I caught my son with a worm in his mouth the other day.
Nice.
It's protein.
Yeah. Anyway,
Did you pat him on the back? Or did you take it away?
well, I said, hey, you gotta spit that out. But that was
That's probably smart.
that was my modern impulse.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
My modern.
slurp it down.
Did you ever eat a worm? As a kid?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've eaten-
Really?
I've eaten a lot.
I
of
did
them.
eat a worm too. Yeah. I ate a
Yeah.
worm. Have you eaten a bug, Mitch? Any bugs?
I don't think so. No.
What? Yeah. What about an
Yeah.
ant? Like on the Jungle
You
Book,
know,
they eat
once
ants.
in college, I went into my dark room. My roommate was asleep, so I didn't want to turn on any lights. Poured a bowl of cereal for myself, poured some milk, started eating it. Saw something animate in the bowl, flipped the light on, ants all in it. I'd already eaten like 8 or 9
Oh, there you go.
spoonfuls.
Nice.
So yes,
You didn't even notice.
You're onto the animal protein now. You can't go back.
All right, guys. You guys have a good night.
All right.
See ya.
Bye.
Talk to you soon.